Even though I thought Netflix's September lineup was unusually disappointing, they have more than made up for it in October with a huge lineup. I've got over 50 titles to discuss in this video. A bunch of them are brand new releases coming throughout the month of October. But before that, I want to tell you about all the stuff they're adding on the first, movies you're familiar with, but some great ones I love. In fact, my top 10 picks out of everything they're adding on October 1st includes a Megan Fox movie titled Till Death. This is actually a pretty decent thriller from her. I would say even if you have not liked her in anything over the years, there's still a chance you could enjoy this flick. She's trapped out in this remote cabin in the snow, people are trying to kill her. It's got really great scenes of tension, and she actually doesn't have a ton of dialogue in the movie, but she does a good job running and hiding throughout most of it. They're also adding Red Dragon. This was the final Hannibal Lecter flick to star Anthony Hopkins, but it's actually based on the same book as Michael Mann's Manhunter, a movie that is about to leave Prime Video any day now, and it made my top recommendations for the month in September on Prime Video. I don't like this Red Dragon version quite as much, but it does fit in with those Anthony Hopkins Hannibal Lecter movies much better. ELYSIUM is another one that made my top 10, even though it did disappoint me when it released. For some reason, it just did not connect with me the same way that Neil Blomkamp's other movie, District 9, did, and I fully expected it to. At the same time, you get this pretty badass cyberpunk dystopian future sci-fi flick, and it's got something to say. There's quite a bit of point to this movie, but I feel like it could have been miles better with just a little bit more push. That said, I still do enjoy this flick. Believe it or not, I also really enjoy the Jason Statham remake of The Mechanic. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Charles Bronson movies, and The Mechanic is one of my all-time favorites. The thing I like about this Jason Statham version, though, is that it feels quite different from the Bronson version. Doesn't feel like it's trying to recreate it in any sort of way, and on its own, it's a pretty solid flick. You get a good role from Ben Foster in there as well. And the sequel to this one I thought went real silly and ridiculous, but this first one is fairly grounded. I also happen to think The Girl Next Door is one of the most underrated comedies released in the 21st century so far. Now, it does have a cult following. There are plenty of people who know about and appreciate this movie, but if you've never seen it, this is a fantastic coming-of-age comedy. Emile Hirsch plays a young man who discovers that a cute looking girl moves in next door, but she's also an ex-adult film star. But they end up sparking a pretty interesting relationship, and the movie is funny as hell, and you get Timothy Olyphant playing a pretty decent bad guy in this as well. It's just a well-rounded coming-of-age comedy that still feels pretty relevant and edgy, even today. They're also adding Jarhead, one I haven't seen in a while, and even though it's not quite on the same level as a movie like Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket, I would say that Jarhead is like that generation's version of Full Metal Jacket. It touches on some similar themes and is an excellent Sam Mendes flick. They've also got Brian De Palma's Scarface coming to the platform. A long one, sure. Now, don't get me wrong, I love this movie, but I also consider it to be one of the more overrated movies maybe ever released. For some reason, this movie gets way more credit than I think it deserves. That said, it's still a solid gangster flick with some incredible moments, just maybe overshadowed by the lore that it has created over the years. But another gangster movie I like even more that I do not think is overrated is Boys in the Hood, a classic that I think all movie buffs need to see at one point or another. In terms of this genre, like the 90s LA gangster flick, there are a bunch of them, but they do not get any better than Boys in the Hood. And then they're adding Cinderella Man. This is directed by Ron Howard and is one of my favorite boxing movies of all time, just behind Raging Bull, and I'll say this is much more of a boxing movie than Raging Bull was. It is like the ultimate underdog story, and it's just beautifully told by Ron Howard, a director I've always appreciated, but somehow more recently I've come to appreciate his work even more and more. It's just 9 times out of 10, it's so well done, and Cinderella Man is one of my favorite movies of his. And then to round out my top 10, again, this is just my top 10 picks out of all the older movies they're adding on the first. We've got Psycho and The Birds. It's a twofer. They haven't added Alfred Hitchcock movies in a while, and I will say the last time they added Psycho, they added like an old version that was cropped down and kind of grainy. I don't know why they would do that. These movies have been remastered. They look fantastic when they have, so hopefully they figured out how to put the proper version on this time around. But that's not it. It's October. They're adding a ton of horror movies, starting with Halloween, the most recent remake, one that I thought was excellent. I did not really love where they went with the sequels to this one, but I do feel like the original does stand on its own fairly well as a respectful remake to the original. They're also adding It Chapter 2, which I thought was amazing. I loved the cast that they assembled for this movie. It's got loads of weird, trippy, like psychedelic effects in it, and it culminates in this really big way. For comparison, I love the original miniseries from way back, but I thought the first half was miles better than the second half. I felt like that miniseries just got kind of silly with its effects and its storytelling. With the movie, I think Chapter 2 far exceeds Chapter 1, and I liked Chapter 1. They're also adding You're Next, a movie that does have some years on it now, and it does have a cult following, but it's just a surprising slasher flick. In the same way that like Halloween invented slasher movies, You're Next didn't invent anything, but it sort of reinvents the slasher genre a bit. Meaning if you like that genre, you do need to see You're Next. It does enough new things in it to make it really fresh, and even though it's got like 10 years on it now, it still feels fresh. Same goes for As Above, So Below, a movie I did not think I would have liked. In fact, it looks like your standard out-of-the-box found footage flick, and it feels like it when you first start watching it. But this movie's got a little bit of a trick up its sleeve, and it is just how bonkers and how deep this movie actually goes. The low budget quality up front kind of tricks you into thinking you're going to be watching a low budget movie, but As Above, So Below goes over the top in kind of the best way possible. I love recommending this flick, especially to people who feel like they're tired of the found footage genre. And then not quite a horror movie, but they're adding Yellow Jackets Season 1. This was originally on Showtime, now Paramount Plus. If you don't have access to either, it's your chance to catch up here. Odds are, if enough people watch Yellow Jackets, they will add the subsequent seasons as they get released. Now, there's still a lot more they're adding on the first, but I'm gonna blow through these quickly because they're not my top picks, but they're still great recommendations, like Salt, starring Angelina Jolie. Just a fun, kind of boilerplate action movie with some pretty decent twists and turns. They're also adding the original Karate Kid trilogy. Legion was another one I recently recommended. I believe it was free on YouTube of all places, but it's coming to Netflix. Visually stunning, storytelling-wise, doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but is a fun Halloween watch, especially for people who don't like really scary horror movies. They're also adding the most recent Robin Hood with Taron Egerton, Jamie Foxx, and Ben Mendelsohn. 8 Mile has now become sort of an American classic movie. They're also adding Escape Plan with Sylvester Stallone and Schwarzenegger. Oh, and comedy-wise, again, still October 1st, 21 Jump Street.
I don't like that. Put your tongue back in your mouth. Put your tongue in your mouth and close it. What are you doing? Stop it. Actually, that's not bad.
22 Jump Street.
My name is Jeff. It's Hefe, man.
Win a Date with Tad Hamilton, Bridesmaids.
No! She does not get a party favor! She does not get a dog!
And then stand-up comedian Tim Dillon has an interesting show dropping on October 1st. It's titled This Is Your Country, and it looks like one of those old talk show formats.
You're here to confess to your girlfriend that you used to do porn. Yeah.
Like Ricky Lake, Sally Jesse Raphael, Maury, Montel Williams, Jerry Springer. It looks like he's trying to revive that strictly for comedic purposes. Very good chance this is going to be absolutely hysterical.
My name is Tim Dillon, and regrettably, this is your country.
But let's keep rolling with the rest of the month. For the family, they're adding a Halloween special based on The Bad Guys. It's The Bad Guys Halloween Heist. You know, this will be an animated 20-30 minute Halloween special, always fun to watch as a family. But then on the 4th, they've got a long-awaited sequel coming to the platform. It's The Platform 2. Now, the original, the platform, is from Spain. They do have a good dubbed version. If you don't like reading subtitles, I imagine it'll be the same for the platform too. It's a wild concept. It's this large prison facility that's arranged in a giant stack. One big stack of cells, and a platform is lowered every single day, and it's loaded with a banquet of food. The rub is that you're allowed to eat as much as you want, and the people below are stuck with whatever's left. So it's metaphorical. In fact, the metaphor is fairly on the nose, but then the things they do with that simple setup are actually quite mind-blowing. So mind-blowing, in fact, in the first one, I'm curious as to how they're going to build upon it, because I feel like they explored the ideas fairly well with that first one, but the sequel looks bonkers, even though aesthetically it looks almost identical to the first movie. Based on the trailer, it looks like this one might get even wilder than the first. Just in time for Halloween, I'm releasing 4 new t-shirt designs. We've got this Mad Max inspired one. I've got a Repo Man design, one for Escape from New York fans, and one inspired by the Goonies. All available very soon. If you want to be the first to pick one up, make sure you're signed up for my email newsletter. You can use this or go to the link in the description. It's free to sign up, obviously, and I give movie recommendations every single Friday. It's 5 that I typically don't recommend here on the channel very often. The email includes new release recommendations. On the 7th, they're adding a documentary titled The Menendez Brothers, and this was actually designed to accompany the new series that just released last month titled Monsters, about the Menendez brothers. So if you're into the show, the documentary is going to be a must-watch. Because of the time that I'm recording this, I have not actually started watching the show, but if you haven't watched Monsters either, it's from the same creators as Dahmer, which I thought was just incredible, and it stars Javier Bardem. Like, it looks like solid stuff. I'm going to be watching it probably before this video releases. On the 8th, Ali Wong has a new special. She's done great on Netflix over the years, so I imagine this one's going to be just as good. Also on the 8th, another Asian persuasion title with Dinner Time Live with David Chang, returning for season 2. This is a fun foodie kind of show if you didn't catch season 1. They do run these live, there's celebrities. It's an interesting sort of talk show setup. On the 10th, Outer Banks returns for season 4. Not a show I've been watching. I think it's targeted at a younger audience, but it is very popular if you've been checking it out. It's been a while, but season 4 is coming real soon. And then they're also adding Tomb Raider, The Legend of Lara Croft, a new animated series. I mean, Netflix is going wild with the animated stuff lately. I loved the new Terminator Zero series that just released last month, so if Tomb Raider is half as good as that, I'm going to be checking it out. On the 11th, they're adding a spicy one that actually stars Laura Dern and Liam Hemsworth in a fairly romantic-looking movie. Based on the trailer, though, it looks like this one simmers for quite a while before they get to it. Obviously, there's a pretty big age gap between the two of them, and the movie's set in a beautiful location. If you generally like things like this, again, this looks like a spicy one, but also doesn't quite look like my cup of tea. For something silly, they're adding Adam Sandler's Pixels, another fun one to watch with the family with a bunch of just retro references.
Somebody annihilate this stupid thing!
Also on the 11th, they're adding the new Scream, the one from 2022. I didn't bother watching it. I was kind of screamed out by the time this one released, but could be a good watch for Halloween. And then the one I'm the most interested in that they're dropping on the 11th is titled Uprising. This is a Korean historical drama that looks absolutely wild. It looks like there's sword fights, battle sequences. It looks like it's shot fairly well as well. And I love me some brutal movies from South Korea, and this one just looks like an absolute stunner. Speaking of stunners, on the 12th, they're adding A Quiet Place Part 2. I was genuinely surprised at how solid of a sequel this was. In this genre, sequels are rarely good, and A Quiet Place Part 2 is literally just a continuation of the first. If you enjoy the first, I highly recommend pursuing this one. In fact, the new one that's currently available on Paramount Plus I thought was great as well, but out of the 3, in terms of some of the sequences and the ideas that come to life in them, I really do think the second might be the best. But one to put on for the kids, not necessarily one to watch with them, is Clifford the Big Red Dog, also getting added on the 12th. On the 14th, they add a wild one starring Russell Crowe, and he's been doing some real wild movies lately, but the wildest one has got to be Unhinged.
Ma'am, are you okay?
I'm pretty sure the guy in that truck's following me.
Why don't you just chill, man? Go your own way.
In this movie, he plays an unhinged guy who has a fit of road rage that basically doesn't quit for the entire movie. Now, this is not a great film or anything, but it is an exciting sort of popcorn crunching thriller, meaning don't overthink Unhinged too much, but if you want to just have a wild time watching an absolutely unhinged Russell Crowe, the movie does deliver that. On the 16th, they're bringing back Ancient Apocalypse for Season 2. I thought Season 1 was incredibly interesting. They explore all sorts of building sites around the world that just seem to predate any sort of timeline we currently have for civilization. So that alone is kind of a mind bender. But then the series does do a good job of contextualizing some of these things as well in terms of where most archaeology is today. Another movie you can turn your brain off for is Snake Eyes, G.I. Joe Origins. Another one I actually didn't bother watching, even though I rather enjoyed the first two G.I. Joe movies. I don't think I had it in me for this one. Plus, my kids aren't really old enough to watch these yet, but they could be a fun watch. And then one I just found out about, but I'm very excited for, is titled Woman of the Hour. This is Anna Kendrick's first time in the director's chair, and she's doing a period piece thriller. She actually plays a woman who wins a date on a dating game show, but the guy she wins a date with has something beyond sinister up his sleeve. With her as the director, I'm super excited to see what she brings to the table. The trailer alone does not share much, and it looks absolutely chilling.
Excuse me, man. Can you give us another round?
On the 19th, they're bringing back American Ninja Warrior with a bunch of new episodes. The 21st adds Kung Fu Panda 4, a movie that was just out in theaters a few months back. I've watched it with the kids, and it's every bit as good as the other Kung Fu Panda flicks. On the 23rd, they're adding This Is the Zodiac Speaking, a new true crime documentary that is supposedly going to reveal new information about the Zodiac Killer. No, I don't think they've solved anything with this documentary, but it should at least bring up some new and interesting questions. And then, speaking of thrillers, on the 25th, there's another one I'm highly anticipating titled Don't Move. This one, the setup sounds fairly simple. A woman is drugged and set off into the woods where she's slowly becoming paralyzed by the drugs she was given, and a man is hunting her down. That's the basic setup. Looks like it's shot well, looks like it should deliver some new and interesting ideas. I'm crossing my fingers for this one. I want it to be a solid pick. For even more laughs, on the 29th, they're adding a new Tom Papa comedy special titled Home Free. I find him incredibly funny, and he's almost clean. Like, most of his material is squeaky clean, and then every now and then he squeaks something mature in there, but for the most part, he's one of the better clean comics working today. Then on the 30th, right before Halloween, they're adding Time Cut, another teen-centric horror flick, but this one does involve time travel. Looks like it's got kind of a cool vibe to it, but also, again, targeted at a younger audience. And then finally on the 31st, I thought I'd mention they're bringing The Diplomat back for season 2. This is Kerry Russell's latest project, kind of a political drama if you're into that stuff. But here is everything they're taking off of Netflix in the month of October. Just pause the screen if you need more time, but I've put some titles in bold. These are titles I've recommended strongly on recent videos. Don't forget to sign up for the email newsletter if you want to be first to get one of my new shirt designs, or if you just want to get movie recommendations in your inbox every Friday. I send out 5 recommendations in that email, and they're typically things I'm not recommending here on the channel, like brand new theatrical releases. But I will keep making these videos as long as y'all keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this special Netflix episode, and you will see me on the next one.